Funny. It feels like we've met before, even though you're just a high school dropout. I don't usually associate with someone so uneducated.
I stood up and smirked at the interviewer. Yeah, you're always flattering to me.
What do you mean?
I took out my business card holder and handed one card to Robert. As soon as he saw it, he turned pale.
What kind of joke is this?
My name is Sean Kramer, 55 years old. I'm the president of a restaurant group. Due to family circumstances, I started working right after finishing high school, beginning in a restaurant kitchen. While working there, I earned my chef's license. And in my 30s, I became independent and opened my own restaurant. The restaurant was a huge success and expanded into a chain. Now, I'm the president of the company. One day, I arranged to have dinner with my best friend. My best friend's name is Tom Hanks. We were classmates in middle school, and he runs a staffing agency that's been in his family since his father's time. Tom is a genuine rich kid, but due to his family's policy, he went to public schools for elementary and middle school. We ended up in the same class in middle school and hit it off right away, becoming inseparable friends. While I started working right after high school, Tom went on to a prestigious high school and graduated from a top university. He joined his father's company, gained experience, and became the president 3 years ago. Despite our different family backgrounds, educational paths, and career choices, we've always been able to talk openly about anything. When I started my own restaurant and later expanded the business, I often sought Tom's advice. Moreover, Tom's company has been providing staff for my restaurants and headquarters, so we've had a long-standing relationship both personally and professionally. I arrived at the restaurant we had reserved for dinner, and I waited for my best friend. Relaxing in a private room, he showed up about 30 minutes late.
Sorry to keep you waiting.
Seeing Tom's face, I was taken aback. What happened to you? You look terrible. It had been a while since I last saw him, and he looked astonishingly gaunt. His cheeks were hollow, his face pale, and his eyes lacked their usual vigor.
Well, work has been really busy lately.
Even his voice lacked energy. I started to worry that Tom might be sick. Tom, are you sure you're okay? You're not feeling unwell, are you?
No, I'm fine. It's not that.
I sensed that he was troubled by something. Are you worried about something? If it's bothering you this much, just tell me. We're best friends, right? Tom crossed his arms, closed his eyes, and let out a small groan. After a while, he finally decided to speak.
Actually, there's a problem at one of our branches. The turnover rate at that branch is abnormally high. It's been like this for the past 3 years since I became president. And
He lowered his voice and furrowed his brow.
we received an anonymous tip. Someone at that branch is involved in illegal activities.
That's bad. Having someone in the company in trouble with the law is a huge issue. If that person gets caught, it could ruin the company's reputation. Depending on the severity, it could even threaten the company's survival. But I felt there was more to this story. Tom seemed to notice my skepticism.
You're wondering why this issue has been ignored for 3 years, right? The problem is the person accused at the branch. His name is Robert Redford. He's the HR manager at the branch, and his father works at the headquarters. To make matters worse, that father figure is the right-hand man of the former president, who is my father.
Tom sighed heavily.
There's no doubt that Robert has been causing trouble both inside and outside the company, and his father at headquarters is aware of it. I suspect they've been covering it up before it could reach me. Last month, a whistleblower email was sent to everyone in the company, revealing this issue for the first time.
According to Tom, the email stated that several people had quit due to pressure from HR manager Robert. It also claimed that Robert was involved in illegal activities and receiving bribes in return. The email expressed that they could no longer tolerate Robert's tyranny. After reading the email, Tom called in Robert's father. Robert's father, David Redford, is 73 years old this year. He remained with the company as an advisor after Tom's father stepped down as president. David had supported the former president and was a highly trusted figure. Tom found it hard to believe that such a man's son could be so malicious and was skeptical. When he showed the email to David, Tom demanded an explanation.
David, what is this about? Isn't this HR manager Robert mentioned here your son at the branch?
David responded firmly.
This is someone trying to frame my son. As you know, I have worked tirelessly for this company since the time of the former president. I've always told my son not to rely on the fact that his father is at headquarters, but to contribute to the company. Do you doubt such a person? Me, who has served since the former president's time.
Tom had a lot of respect for David, who had taught him many things from scratch when he was inexperienced. Seeing David so furious was overwhelming. With a troubled look, Tom continued.
David insisted on clearing his son's name himself. He wanted to investigate the matter thoroughly. Though I trusted David, I couldn't leave it at that, so I officially let David handle the investigation while secretly assigning another person to look into Robert's background.
The results of the two reports were completely different. The first report, by David, found no issues with Robert. There were no problems like those pointed out in the whistleblower email, and interviews with branch employees revealed that no one felt pressured. There was no evidence that Robert had engaged in illegal staffing practices. Therefore, the report concluded that the whistleblower's claims were entirely false, and that the whistleblower should be punished for trying to bring down a company employee. On the other hand, the second report, conducted by another investigator, painted a very different picture. Robert Redford, 48 years old, a graduate of a prestigious national university. He had previously worked at a major company. He joined Tom's company 4 years ago as a mid-career hire. He had been the HR manager at his previous job, and his performance there had led to his unusual recruitment. Tom's company hires people based on merit regardless of age, so hiring someone in their 40s wasn't unusual. However, it was highly unusual for someone to start as a manager from the beginning. In reality, it was found that Robert had caused numerous problems at his previous company and was fired, but he had falsified his resume to get the job. It was suspected that his father, David Redford, had intervened with the president on Robert's behalf. The investigator who looked into Robert tried to discreetly interview branch employees, but everyone kept silent. Then, they contacted several former employees to ask why they left. According to them, Robert was a terrible tyrant. Since joining the company, Robert has only been a manager in name, pushing work onto his subordinates and harassing those he didn't like by assigning them menial tasks. After the previous president stepped down and Tom took over, Robert's behavior escalated. Performance reviews were based on whether Robert liked you or not. If anyone tried to correct him, they were buried in work until they broke. He verbally abused new employees, ruling through fear to ensure they obeyed him. Next, they interviewed former temp workers registered with the branch. One former temp described an incident at a traditional town factory in a residential neighborhood. There was a suspicious person among the temp workers, and accidents started happening frequently at the factory. Heavy machinery fell over, items being carried by forklifts fell, and hazardous chemicals were spilled, causing serious injuries. The factory's products became so substandard that contracts were canceled, and rumors began to spread, ruining its reputation. It quickly closed and went out of business. It was suspected that Robert was behind the accidents and the factory's closure. The theory was that Robert sent his crony as a temp worker to cause problems deliberately, leading to the factory's downfall. After it closed, the factory was swiftly demolished, and an apartment building was constructed. The factory was located in a convenient area near the station, and there had been rumors for many years that a certain company had been eyeing it. It was rumored that Robert colluded with that company to oust the factory owner. Robert allegedly received bribes from this company and had brought down other businesses over the past 3 years. Therefore, the report concluded that the whistleblower's claims were likely true. Tom was shocked by this report. He was appalled that someone like Robert had been running amok and felt betrayed by David. Tom showed both reports to his father, the former president, who still held significant influence despite stepping down. However, the former president was furious upon reading the reports.
Tom, are you doubting David?
Doubt. It's clear from these reports. Robert and David are guilty.
The former president angrily tore up the reports.
How dare you doubt David? I've always told you there's no one more trustworthy than him.
No matter how much Tom explained, the former president refused to accept the reports. He even threatened to call a shareholder meeting to remove Tom if he fired the Redfords. Finishing his story, Tom buried his head in his hands.
My dad won't believe anything against the Redfords. David must have been feeding him sweet lies. Unless we present undeniable proof, he'll never believe it. What should I do?
Seeing Tom so defeated, I had an idea. Hey, if we present evidence in front of the former president, will the Redfords be fired?
Yeah, probably.
You've helped me a lot. Now it's my turn to help you. I've got a plan. Don't be shocked. I grinned as I spoke. A few days later, I was at Tom's company's branch, wearing a suit, a tie, and fake glasses I don't usually wear. Today, my name is John Smith. Of course, it's a fake name. I came here today to attend an interview with this company. Today, I'm going to deliver justice to Robert Redford on behalf of my best friend, Tom. I checked in at reception and waited in the designated area to be called for the interview.
John Smith, please come in.
When my name was called, I greeted them and entered the room, where a long table and a single chair facing it were set up. 2 interviewers sat behind the table. One of them was Robert Redford. Next to him sat a subordinate, looking small and timid. I took the seat provided, and Robert began reading my resume.
So, you came highly recommended from the headquarters. Let's see. John Smith, 55 years old. And your highest level of education is high school? Come on, don't joke around. There's no way a high school dropout could get into a major company like ours.
He tossed the resume aside without even finishing it. Robert's subordinate quickly tried to intervene.
Robert, you haven't finished reading the resume.
Robert glared sharply at his subordinate.
This interview is over. There's no job here for an uneducated high school dropout. Don't you understand that? Having someone useless like you as my subordinate is the worst.
The subordinate bit his lower lip, fell silent, and looked forward, making eye contact with me. He had a puzzled look for a moment, then suddenly widened his eyes and turned pale. I nodded quietly, signaling him to keep silent. Robert didn't notice any of this and smirked at me.
But 55 years old and a high school dropout, currently unemployed, that's sad. Your life must be a wreck. How did you survive this long? Are you homeless by any chance?
Such ridicule didn't affect me at all. I looked Robert straight in the eye and responded, "Indeed, I entered the workforce right after high school. Though I didn't pursue formal education, I've gained various experiences from a young age. My performance at my previous job was highly regarded, and I believe that education isn't everything. I also heard that your company hires based on ability and not educational background or age. So, I expect to be judged on my abilities." When I finished speaking, Robert burst out laughing. His subordinate, who knew my true identity, was on edge, while Robert began mocking me.
You think anyone believes that nonsense? A high school dropout who's competent at work? You're 55 years old, an old man. No one wants someone that old. Talking about abilities and achievements is useless. You're irrelevant from the moment you said you're a high school dropout.
Robert continued to sneer at me.
You talk about abilities and achievements, but what kind of work have you done? There's no way a high school dropout could get a decent job. Were you a construction worker or a beggar? I don't know how much you bribed the headquarters, but too bad you're not hired. Don't show that poor face here again.
I watched Robert intently as he spewed his insults. His eyes gleamed with sadistic pleasure. His mouth twisted into an ugly sneer. I concluded that he was an extremely low-class person with no decency or intelligence. I just watched quietly, and Robert's expression shifted slightly.
It's funny. It feels like I've met you before, even though you're just a high school dropout. I don't usually know anyone so uneducated.
I stood up and smirked at Robert. "Yeah, you're always flattering to me."
What do you mean?
I took out my business card holder and handed a card to Robert. As soon as he saw it, he turned pale.
What kind of joke is this?
The card read, "Sean Kramer, CEO of Kramer Group." Robert was speechless as I removed my fake glasses.
Yikes.
Robert made a strange noise and his mouth started to gape open. I smiled and grabbed Robert's shoulder. "Hey, Robert. I didn't think you'd forget the face of your client, the CEO." I was acquainted with Robert. When I heard Tom's story, I suspected it was him, as he had visited my company several times. He had just visited recently, but he seemed to have forgotten my face already. I don't have a face that changes dramatically just by wearing fake glasses. Robert started shaking as I grabbed his shoulder.
Sean, please stop joking. Why are you here for an interview?
I wanted to see how this company handles its personnel. Since your company provides staff to ours, I needed to ensure the source company's training is reliable. This experience has been very enlightening. It's clear that this company cannot provide competent staff. As I said this, Robert's face went pale. Understandably so, as I am a major client of this company. Robert's subordinate hurriedly started to apologize.
Sir, please wait. We deeply apologize for the rudeness.
I raised my hand to stop him. No, it's not your fault. It's this man's fault. When I tightened my grip on Robert's shoulder, He started trembling and couldn't speak. I think I'll call the headquarters and tell them we're ending our contract. I called a certain person. Hello, is this Tom Hanks at Trustworthy Staffing? This is Sean Kramer. I'm afraid we have to terminate our contract. The reason? I came for an interview to test your HR manager, Robert, but he didn't recognize me, his client, and insulted me, calling me a poor high school dropout. He said that without a formal education, one can't be hired no matter their abilities or achievements. A staffing company that can't properly evaluate people's abilities is not reliable. If you're concerned, you should come to the branch and speak with HR manager Robert yourself. With that, I hung up the phone. Well, let's wait until someone arrives. I sat down with a smile, observing Robert's pale, trembling face. Robert, not understanding why this was happening, looked pale and quivered. I beckoned Robert's subordinate and whispered something to him. Although puzzled, he did as I asked and quickly left the room. Now, it was just Robert and me in the room, and the silence was heavy. An hour later, we heard hurried footsteps outside the room, and the door opened.
We deeply apologize for this, sir.
The person who rushed into the room was David Redford. Robert's face lit up with joy, but his father's presence only made David angrier.
Robert, what have you done?
Robert tried to cling to his father.
Dad, help me. Do what you always do.
David ignored him and rushed over to me.
Sean, I deeply apologize for my son's rudeness. I didn't know you were coming for an interview. Please forgive his impoliteness. I'll make sure to reprimand him later.
I tilted my head slightly at David, pretending to think. This is troubling. Someone with such low character should be fired. At the word fired, David panicked.
Yes, he may have been rude, but this is the first time. Please give him another chance.
First time? Don't joke. Your son has been involved in quite a few nefarious activities, hasn't he? You must be aware of them. As I questioned him, David's face wrinkled and he began to tremble.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh, playing dumb, are you? Like father, like son. Let's call in the witnesses. Please come in. I called out loudly toward the door. The door opened, and 3 witnesses entered, led by Robert's subordinate. The Redfords were visibly shaken upon seeing them. Allow me to introduce the witnesses. They know quite well about the misdeeds of you, the Redfords. The 3 witnesses, eyes burning with anger, confronted the Redfords. The first to speak was a former employee of the company.
Know them? Because of Robert, I was mentally and physically destroyed and had to resign. And Robert embezzled company funds, blaming it on me when I left. I'll never forgive him.
Next, a woman beside him turned red with anger.
I was sent to a factory and threatened by Robert to cause problems there. He knew I'm a single mother and couldn't afford to lose my job. When I refused, one of his cronies deliberately caused an accident, and I got injured and couldn't work anymore. David blamed me for the accident. These people are the worst.
The third witness stepped forward and grabbed Robert by the collar.
You ruined my factory. It's all your fault. You colluded with that corrupt company to shut down my factory and injured my employees. I'm suing you.
Surrounded by the 3, the Redfords fell to their knees and began pleading.
We're so sorry. Please forgive us.
No, we won't forgive you.
Looking back, I saw Tom and the former president standing at the doorway. In preparation for the interview, I had orchestrated several plans. First, I asked Tom to gather the victims and have them stay near the branch secretly. When I whispered to Robert's subordinate, I asked him to bring the witnesses. Additionally, I called Tom about ending the contract in front of Robert to lure out David and hold him accountable. I knew that David would appear to try to cover up the situation. Sure enough, he came right over. Finally, I invited the former president to the branch under the pretext of inspecting it. The goal was to expose the Redfords' crimes with solid evidence right in front of the former president. My plan worked perfectly, and the Redfords' crimes were laid bare for all to see. The former president, shaking with anger, approached the Redfords.
How dare you betray me, David? You and your son have disgraced this company. I will never forgive you.
George, I have always served this company. This was all my son's doing.
What are you saying, Dad? You knew about the bribes.
To everyone's astonishment, the Redfords started blaming each other in front of the former president. Their pathetic attempt to shift the blame from one to the other was so pitiful that it drew snickers from those present. Finally, as they began to grapple with each other, the former president shouted,
Enough! You're both equally guilty. The witnesses here are proof. Don't think you can get away with this. You're both fired and will be handed over to the police.
At that point, I finally spoke up. Oh, about that. I already called the police while you were arguing. They should be here any minute. As I smiled, holding my phone, the Redfords turned even paler and continued their heated argument. I glanced at Tom, who was smiling in satisfaction. Thus, the Redfords were arrested. One by one, their crimes came to light. Extortion, embezzlement, bribery, forgery, and more. The number of victims was vast, and the testimonies were overwhelming. The company that had colluded with Robert was also exposed, leading to the arrest and bankruptcy. Eventually, the Redfords were sentenced to prison. I heard that Robert is now being exploited in prison. One of the people Robert had wronged is the prison boss. He's crying to the prison guards that he's being bullied by inmates, but it seems he's being ignored. That's karma for him. Tom's company went through a rough patch, but they used the opportunity to reform workplace practices. As a result, former employees returned, and talented individuals joined the company. By the way, the whistleblower who started all this, it was Robert's subordinate, the one who was next to him during my interview. He was concerned about Robert's tyranny and the company's future, and bravely decided to blow the whistle. Tom highly valued him, and now that employee is set for a promotion. The former president admitted his mistakes, stopped interfering with company policies, and has retired quietly. Tom's company is in good hands now. After the turmoil settled, Tom thanked me again.
Sean, it's all thanks to you. Thank you.
Don't mention it. I actually had a lot of fun. Can you believe Robert didn't recognize me with just the fake glasses? As I made a show of taking off my fake glasses stylishly, Tom burst into laughter. We'll continue to support each other as business partners and lifelong friends for many years to come.